All right, so we've got Matt with us today, and when we asked to introduce him, he said it's actually Superman Matt. With the limitations of language, there are actually no words to truly describe anyone, and I think that's really true to get down to the core of who someone is. Matt's got an electric array of work experiences. He's been in over 40 industries. He's somebody that I know personally that really loves to enjoy life and try different things and get the most out of it. He's a father, an average chess enthusiast, and an avid Bombers fan. For those of you who are listening overseas, that's AFL. I'm also a Bombers fan, just not a very good one. Matt's had an interesting experience after facing mental health challenges in your 20s, was it, Matt? You began a path of gathering a wealth of knowledge and experience for psychology, emotional and spiritual development. And now he's devoted to life, supporting others to find bliss and live their best life. So that's my introduction of you with a little bit of knowledge that gave you, Matt. How about you start by sharing the worst possible joke / best worst joke that you've got?
Yeah, quick question. Is butt cheeks one word or need to split them apart?
Is that the joke?
Nah, yeah, but did you hear the news about the guy that invented the knock knock jokes?
No.
Nah, yeah, he just recently won the Nobel Prize. No, but do you know how to tell when a joke becomes a dad joke?
No.
It's a parent.
Fuck, he's on fire today, ladies and gentlemen.
Leave him there. I've got a 3-year-old son, so I've got license for the dad jokes these days. So I'm taking full advantage.
Dad jokes and dad noises. Like I'm looking forward to dad noises. I've started to spin when you stand up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not welcome until you're dad. If you're not a dad or you're not over 35, then it's seen as you're getting old. But after that, it's almost permission.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'd like you to introduce yourself in your words, because it's easy for us to rattle off things that you do and things that you've been called, but introduce yourself as yourself.
So I've always been challenged by this, and I think a lot of people resonate when I share that, when I've gone to answer this in the past, nothing has ever quite felt right. It's always, like you said in the start of the introduction, it's always felt limited. Do I say what I do? Is that how I introduce myself? Do I say what I'm up to now, what my experience in the past was, what I'm trying to attain in the future, my characteristics, traits, and attributes? Essentially, it's an endless sort of discussion that we can have just to introduce myself. But I'm Matt, and I like Superman. So yeah, we'll go with that and we'll let it unfold.
So he's Matt and he likes Superman, and I just want to touch on that for a little bit. When I hear someone say something like that, there's things about Superman that you must like, that you like about yourself, or that you want to become, right? So I believe that life is about a journey, that we take virtues with us, and Superman's got pretty good virtues, doing the right thing when it's, even when you don't want to, being able to see the bigger picture of things, but as well as come back to that alter ego of Matt that sits in front of us, that has all the problems and issues that every other person has. And I think a lot of us have that experience of being both of those things. I think Superman's a perfect example of, and Clark Kent of the alter egos that we get. Like one minute we want to save the world and become Grant Cardone or Gary Vee or Tony Robbins or Jeff Bezos, and other minutes we're like, fuck, I've actually got to go to work too.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I was wearing this just playing around with my son this morning, but when I went to get changed and get ready for it, I'm like, I'm just going to leave this on because it does represent, and I guess one of the messages I wanted to share with people is how the superheroes that we're watching on the big screen at the moment, and so many of these archetypal stories, are just depictions of our own inner states and our own inner being. And so Superman is a great one, where there is simultaneously inside of us that hero that does want to go out and contribute to the greater good, and yet that selfish side of us that needs to work, make a living, be a contributing part of society, take care of the bills, take care of the kids. And so how do we balance those out? And I think Superman is just an awesome archetype and superhero just to watch it unfold, that aspect of ourselves.
Yeah, cool. I agree with that. You heard it here today, kids. Watch Superman. Get a better
And to
one.
be more, I guess, to give more context for myself as well, a bit of depth and insight. Like I do feel that within me, like I do feel a sense of responsibility to my wider community and the world at large. And it is and has been such a challenge to provide for myself and look after my own backyard and simultaneously have that sense of responsibility to the wider community, which is something that I don't feel mastered yet by a long shot. So as I've seen some of the questions we're going to go through, so that'll unfold a little bit more as we go. But yeah, it's definitely still one of those paradoxical challenges that I'm working through myself.
Yeah, I can agree with that with myself. It's and sometimes I actually wake up in the morning and say, how can I be selfish today? It's one of my favorite lines. And those are the days that I often be of most service to a wider community and a bigger effort. It's a really interesting, like, what do I need to do for myself today? And then I find myself by the afternoon, like helping people or picking up glass off the road. And yeah, it's an interesting paradox to step into, to move out of selfishness through being selfish. Yeah, it's a mind twister, and I'm sure we'll get further into it.
Yeah,
So,
no doubt.
what are you passionate about?
I'm passionate about life, experiencing it in as many ways as I can in the time that I've got. Passionate about sort of jailbreaking my own mind and my own state to reach ever greater and expansive states of being, whether that's through contemplation, meditation, psychedelics. Yeah, there's a number of ways that's achieved, but that's definitely something that gets me going and that really, really intrigues me. Passionate about the Bombers. That's my vice of where I get to swim in the sea of pluralism and really like hate another side, because a big part of what I do in the state that I hold is one of I guess inclusiveness, recognizing the systemic nature of reality, the total inclusiveness of all things and connectedness of all things. So, you know, I'm very quick to catch myself, which doesn't happen very much anymore, in moments of judgment or moments of sort of perceiving right, wrong, good or bad. And so I find that playing chess and going for the Bombers and following the footy allows me to soak up the values of what that space can impart on me, and yeah, leave the rest at the door.
Yeah, cool. Sport's pretty interesting. I was a NRL, but I was a Cronulla supporter for a long time, and it did feel like, yeah, it felt like the only time where I could be like, I fucking hate that team. But it wasn't this aggression or vindictiveness. It's just like this real, I guess, like, and I also don't want anything bad to happen to them. It's just like fuck those guys for 80 minutes.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, you just move on with your life.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm even at the point now where I'm like, all right, good goal or good win, or I'm glad that you're here because otherwise we wouldn't have someone to beat. So I've like definitely got a lot more appreciation for the opposition now than I used to. But yeah, I still revel in the despise and the
yeah, there's something I'm passionate about, and I think it speaks a lot to us. And it's not something that's new either. If you go right back through history, there's been some form of competitive physical sport. Admittedly, it's got a bit softer, although UFC and boxing is having a bit more of a rise where people want to see controlled aggression, put out there in the world. But if you go back to Roman times and before that, Egyptian times, this is normal for human behavior to be like, hey, I want to pick a side and somebody to do my dirty work for me.
Yeah. Well, just like Superman, right? Like these sports are archetypes of the yin yang, of the left and the right, so the good and the bad, and it's just, yeah, it's everywhere. We talk
Mm,
about this quite a bit, personally, and the polarity and paradox of life is in everything. So, yeah, it depends on how you decide to look at it. But I definitely recognize my own evolution through when I was fully pluralistic and one-eyed in
mm,
one direction, to the pendulum swinging probably a few times in multiple directions, but now recognizing that bigger picture of, the Bombers can't win if Collingwood's not there. So there's got to be a sense of appreciation for them both there at the same time.
yeah.
And fuck Collingwood.
So for the people who are listening who haven't really grasped into the concept of what you're talking about for pluralistic and the bigger picture, can you explain that in a way for like a beginner, or maybe in a metaphor or a story, so they can go, oh, okay, cool, I get it now, because it's a concept that confuses the greatest minds. And someone
Yeah.
like yourself who's spent a lot of time on it, I've got my own explanations, but I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, for sure. So two energies, one energy expressed in two different ways is what we're talking about. So whether it's when you turn your tap on the shower, it's got hot and it's got cold. It's still temperature, whether no matter how cold it gets or how hot it gets, it's all temperature, the measurement or feeling of temperature. So it's that one energy, but it can be experienced in multiple ways. So that's one example. Another one is the yin yang sign. So you've got the black and the white. That's the two fish chasing each other's tail, and you can't have one without the other. If you take away the white, there's just going to be black. If you take away the black, there's just going to be white. So in order for them to both exist, they need to both coexist together at all times. And so plurality, my brain's not working.
Yeah, got it. Polarity.
Polarity.
Got it.
I mixed up pluralism and polarity in one.
It's probably a new concept. We could write a book about
Yeah,
it.
I'm just writing it down. All right. So yeah, I mean, superheroes, the battle between good and evil. You can't have that. What's Superman going to do if there's no evil in the world? Fuck all, right? So the battle between your own inner dialogue, between the part of you that wants to go and save the world and be giving, and the part of you that just wants to fucking make $1 million, be safe, go live off grid and do your own thing. So it's everywhere. It's in everything we see, whether it's our inner or our outer world, whether it's our the earth that gives life, or the air and the environment outside of it that it breathes from, right? Our lungs that we breathe into, and our trees that breathe that out into it. So whatever it is, it's everywhere in existence. So whatever you're trying to look, whatever you're looking at, in some way, there's a pluralistic pluralistic aspect to it. And yeah, it's literally everywhere. Don't know if
Yeah.
that was easy to understand, but that's what I got.
Yeah, that's like I said, it isn't an easy subject to understand. But the thing is if you once you start to grasp polarity, which is there's a spectrum of a way that things can occur. And one of the easiest one of the most common ones that we hear about in professional and personal development world is the masculine and feminine energies. That's like both exist. But if you look at it with what you said about living off grid and wanting to save the world, there's something about humans where to go into isolation always is for the purpose of some bigger meaning. Even when the yogis went into the cave, it's so they could go into contemplation and learn, become no one. So when they come back out, they can teach everyone. And there's so many more examples of, by doing one thing that is in fact the opposite to what you're wanting to achieve, often creates the outcome. And sleep's a perfect example of how polarity works. So to get more things done, you have to lay in the one spot for 8 hours. And that's both ends of the spectrums of the energy that holds within your body. And it's a really perfect example. You don't sleep, you run out of energy. So if you do nothing, you get more energy, right? Whereas if you kept doing energy, you'd end up with no energy. And that's how polarity can be really easily explained with something that hopefully we all do every night. I don't know if you've listened to recent study on, it's not recent, it's recently in the media. We've known about it for a while. When you sleep, your spinal fluids actually come out of your body and all of your endocrine systems and travel up the back of your neck into your brain, and then suck all of the toxins and dead cells out of your body, and then travel back down and disperse them through your lymphatic system. So when someone says, I don't know why we sleep, there's a pretty good reason.
Yeah, fantastic. No, I hadn't read that. That sounds yeah, it sounds epic.
That's epic. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Okay, let's go.
Okay, you can do it.
I was going to bring up another example that I think I've heard you speak about with the polarity. That's a good one to understand. It is just the Earth and the poles. So you've got the North and the South Pole, right? And so it's all like that. Everything's got those poles. And another couple of examples is like if you want to have more money, you need to stop spending money and save money. And so if you want to have more energy, you need to exert more energy, go and spend more time doing more exercise, exerting yourself. So it's like you do the opposite of what you want, and then you get what you want by doing the opposite of it.
Yeah. And then a line that got said to me the other day is, you don't have to struggle. Because often if you're struggling to try and achieve something, the stopping of the struggle will allow it to happen. And once you see that land for people, it's like, hey, what are you fighting for? Like, it can just happen. It's only as hard as you make it. Yeah, it's a really good example.
Power versus Force. Yeah, Power versus Force by David Hawkins is a great book for that. People are interested.
Yeah, that's actually a recommended read of mine as well. So, what would you say you're particularly good at? Like the one thing where you tickets on yourself?
Look, it's probably going to be a quick list if we go through the next one. What I'm not good at is to take a long time.
So good at everything.
I'm good at everything, bro. I might not have figured out how to do shit yet, but within time, absolutely. So, but right now, what I have, I guess, mastered or on the pathway to mastering would be, to answer it pragmatically, would be being a smartass. One, good at that. I'm good at seeing the big picture, right? I'm good at self-reflecting. I'm good at clearing my own karma, recognizing things that come up that triggers of mine, fears of mine, past traumas of mine that might be coming up from things that are happening around me at the moment. And I'm really good now at identifying those, working through those emotionally, and being able to equilibrate those. And to touch on what I'm talking about for those that don't quite get that is, we experience life bipolar by nature. Things are good, things are bad, things are happy, things are sad, and we store those memories within us. And now those memories are our karma. When we act in the future because of something that's happened in the past, that action is our karma, right? And so in order to clear that, I first need to let go of my bipolar experience of when my dad says, for hypothetically, that I wasn't good enough when I was a 5-year-old boy to go and be an actor in the theater. And so now as an adult, I might be not trying to do stuff because my dad told me when I was a 5-year-old boy that was the case. And so by looking back at that and being able to recognize all of the things that I actually benefited from that experience, all the ways that experience that my dad told me that allowed me to grow, and the person I became, the man I was able to develop into, whatever it is, there's a million and one things, right? Essentially what I'm doing is I'm taking the perception of that experience, which I perceive to be bad, I'm equalizing it, just like this polarity we're talking about, and matching it, because there's always the pole there. So matching it with that equal and opposite benefit and pleasure and greatness that came from that. And so when that happens, the charge and the emotional experience, when I think about that, or when new situations arise similar to that, they don't have the same impact anymore. So I've essentially cleared that karma. I'm not acting karmically because of the past experience anymore. So I'm good at doing that. And I'm also good at poking and prodding and asking the right questions to my friends, families, and clients to support them in doing that as well. And that basically comes from that chat we just had, is having that wider perspective, perception of reality, and seeing that big picture, looking holistically at life.
I think it's a really great skill to take forward with you, and we've been hearing a lot about. I've got my trauma, and everybody has trauma, and there's all these. This is the reason why, and if you've ever asked yourself, this is the reason why I am the way I am, then what Matt's saying is if you can ask yourself the right questions, often in the right order is really important as well, but just why questions, how questions, when questions, what if questions, like what if that wasn't the reason why you were the way you are, and what if you weren't that way? What would life be like? What would you do differently? Are some really easy questions to ask. Or how would I do things differently if I wasn't like this, if I wasn't anxious to go outside, or just trying to think of some common problems we have, if I wasn't too scared to ask for a bit more money at work, or I wasn't scared of closing someone on a sales call, or whatever your what if problem is. If you can ask yourself the right questions and have introspective thought and recognize that, well, maybe it doesn't have to be like that. That is one of the most powerful skill sets a human being can actually develop, because then you're no longer controlled by what's happened to you. You're in control of who you'll become. It's cool
Yeah,
stuff.
and all these questions as well, like really what they're doing is they're just battering down this program that we've been given, that what I think is right, and coming up with answers and beliefs and holding them as my reality. Because another thing that I'm really good at is saying I don't know, right?
Yeah.
I don't believe anything. I know what I know, and I don't know everything else. And I pretty much don't know fucking the majority of stuff. Okay. So that is definitely a benefit and a advantage I have over the majority of people around me, because the majority of people around me I see are so fucking full of themselves and full of what they think they know to be true, that they completely shut off every other potential answer or solution or opportunity outside of them, because of these dogmatic beliefs that they've just like held on to, just like, I can't do this, or yeah, I'm not good enough to do that, or this is right, or that's wrong. So as soon as we've got an answer to something, that boom shuts the door to anything else. So yeah, that is a big one. I think we might dive a bit more into that based on a couple of other questions here as well.
Yeah. How's this feel in your body? That's the way we've always done things. When people say that to me, it just boils my fucking blood. I'm like, okay, great. We used to have dirt roads too.
Yeah, there's a bit. So obviously Tyler shared some questions that he wants to just cover with me potentially. So there's one in particular that I'm like chomping at the bit to get to.
I'll get there.
That's going to cover a lot of this stuff.
We'll get there. Just chill. It's all about, we're just getting everyone.
So funny. Yeah.
All right. What are you bad at, mate?
I have been bad at budgeting. Finances has not been my strong suit. I've been bad at. I've bad or good, depends which way you look at it. I'm the friend that's always fashionably late. So that's a thing. I used to not be good. Well, okay. I used to really struggle to put my best foot forwards when I was doing something I didn't give a fuck about. That was something that happened for quite a while. Now have developed an understanding and perception of reality that shows me that
it's the boring before exciting.
Well, yeah, that too. The old saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
Yeah.
And yeah, psychedelics have definitely been a big help on that journey.
And when you say what is it that
Yeah.
you use in that realm? Is it because there's lots of different types, and it's something that's becoming more prevalent in modern society. We've got MDMA therapy, psychologists and people are delivering now psilocybins. It's either been approved or it is approved. I haven't looked too clearly. And you've got things like ayahuasca, which is a root that comes from the Amazon that you mix with another. I don't really know the recipe. You mix it with another plant, and that can create a psychedelic experience. And what it essentially is doing is that it activates a similar process to all the similar process or the same as, or extracts the DMT, which exists in our pineal gland, which they call the spirit molecule. Pineal gland, there's all explanations of what it is, and there's going to be heaps of different explanations for everything. But just for those who are listening, these medicines, as far as what they are, come from nature, and they've been used for thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years through human society, right up until about 200 years ago. And then they were made illegal. And they're starting to make a resurgence, even to the point where they're seeing that they have a better treatment for mental illness than what we currently have pharmaceutical-wise. And I think it's fantastic. What I'd like you to just share a little bit about, Matt, with psychedelics is like, what do you use? And is there any sort of message or piece of advice that you have around them? Because I know they can be abused as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I feel that first off, do them responsibly if you choose to do them, and if you do them, you do them at your own risk, obviously. And I don't endorse anyone to do them outside of a controlled environment and in irresponsible ways, like I may have done on occasions. But it's interesting because, yeah, where my mind takes me with this is I've had the conventional psychedelics like the psilocybin, magic mushrooms, and the LSD, acid in different forms, and the dimethyltryptamine. And I've also done other forms of drugs that have given me a psychedelic experience as well, and had psychedelic or mystical experiences without any substances as well. And so instead of going into like the makeup and the experience of the drugs themselves, what I'm drawn to talk about is where it has sort of led. I remember the first few experiences I had were really helped me overcome the fear of death, and but at the same time make me very, very aware of my own mortality. And the limited time that I'm going to be here in this form. So that was a pretty powerful experience. It made me go harder at football when I was playing. But that was pretty profound. But ultimately what I see, and one of the things I'm also passionate about is understanding how we develop psychologically, spiritually, and what I've gathered in and what I'm led to believe is that as you develop by being able to take on more and more perspectives. So just like we're talking about the polarity, that's like putting your toe in the baby pool of development. And and when you can finally take yourself out of your own perspective and see that polarity, that there is a polarity in everything, that's a really great first step, because without that, you're fucking stuck so far behind. And so what these drugs and these mystical and psychedelic experiences have done for me anyway, is it opens up my window to more and more and more perspectives on life, on reality, on my psyche. And through a gathering of more and more and more perspectives, I'm able to develop more and more and more internally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And so that's what I find the benefit of playing around with these drugs are, and these medicines, as they like to call them these days, because we're all woke and we speak like that now. Fuck, that's funny. That's another chat. So,
well, the interesting
thing, for me,
before they were medicine, they were herbs, most of them.
Yeah.
It was herbs and drugs.
That's right.
And then we'll probably have a new name for it next month.
Yeah. I just call them Susies.
I went to
Why? Because he gives a fuck what things are called.
I went to a talk, a conversation with a yogic master and another guy who's, I don't even know who he was. He just asked great questions. And he asked him about psychedelics, and he said, he goes, the yogic philosophers did experiment with them over the time, and there is some mention of them. And he said the shamans and the philosophers in the Amazon focused more on the psychedelics, whereas the Indians did a little bit with ganja and there's another root of a tree that they were taking. And he said, but then all of a sudden, like 5 years ago, all of a sudden everybody's a shaman, a yoga teacher, and a DJ by night. And these psychedelics that they were taking as drugs are all of a sudden they're administering them in ceremony. So it talks a lot about, one, how full of shit people are to make money when it comes to this stuff, because as soon as you label it as a shaman, then people have got to come to you to do something, and then it sort of takes the power away from the consumer. But another interesting thing is he said the reason why Indian, so funny, and this is off topic, but they call the Himalayas the Himalayas. And that was the biggest thing I took away from the conversation. Anyway, that's off topic. The reason why
Wait, hold on a minute. What?
Exactly. I'm like, fuck, I've been doing it wrong.
What?
And then he said it like 10 times. I'm like, he's got a life mission to make sure everybody pronounces this properly now. That's why he's traveling. He's calling his home wrong. But no, he said the reason why yogis went away from it is because they realized through the breath, through silence, through darkness, through isolation, you can have the exact same psychedelic effect on the body at the exact potency you need at that time in your life, with no effect on the physical form. Like sometimes it's a couple of days for you to get over these things. Sometimes it's weeks, and I've seen people take months to come out the other side of trips where I've had to do reassociation therapy with, like, reminding people who they are. But if you do it through breath, for instance, you can have a DMT experience and experience visions.
Well, you do every night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Every night when you dream is the DMT being released into the system. And yeah, you're right. There's a lot of breath work that you can do to activate it and to release it as well. But yeah, bro, like I was put into a drug-induced psychosis in my early 20s for taking too much acid one weekend, and spent like a 2.5 week stint in the psych ward. Drug-induced psychosis average stays in psych wards is like 2 to 3 days. So it was pretty fucked.
Yeah.
I look back now at that and I can make sense of what was going on. But as a young 20-year-old kid being shown such a wide perspective at that point, that I wasn't able to integrate and wasn't able to make sense of, and was so far beyond where I was at developmentally at that point in time, I sounded and felt like a crazy person. But now, knowing what I know now, having the experiences I have now, I'm like that's what it was showing me, like the relationship between duality and non-duality, the relationship between the poles and the polarity of everything, and the interconnectedness of it all. But I didn't know how to fucking talk about it, and it made me loopy for quite a while, right? But even when you say like people are taking them and taking advantage of them for the sake of money, that might happen, but it does and it doesn't matter, because it's your own experience, right? And you get what you get when you need it and where you're at. And so whether it's from some fucking junkie in a back alley or some shaman on a hill, you're getting what you fucking need
at the time. And that comes under the philosophy that everything's perfect as it is. Like, you're moving through life and what's being presented to you.
Yeah.
I guess my opinion around that would be, if we choose to raise our vibration as a collective species, the more people that wake up and start having respect for deeper experiences, the less people will have a psychotic episode, and the more will end up at a retreat. Like if you were in a retreat with a philosopher, a yogic master, and somebody who'd done many plant medicines, and you took that much acid or had an experience when you were 20, you'd probably would have saved 5 years of your life. And yes, we are going to go through, just like everything, the stages of, we'll fuck it up as a species. They'll put in stupid laws like they have, and then the laws will start to get broken down, and then we'll trickle it back through, and then there'll be this like rays of it sounds wanky, the rays of vibration, but I think it's just a rays of conscious choice making and decisions and making things available in a way that's like, okay, cool. So here's the best practice that we can think of right now. And if you want to do it in an alleyway, fucking crack on. Like that's
crack on.
That's not when it's not our job to it's never been my job to control people or tell them what to do.
Well, like you said, that the study that you mentioned before as well, how it's hasn't really been mainstream. Not many people would have seen it and heard of it. Like science itself has like 100 to 150 year fat tail, you know, like quantum mechanics was brought out in the 1920s. And still people are like, what the fuck is that? Like you ask pretty much anyone. They're not going to be able to explain it. I really would bumble my way through an explanation at best still as well. And I feel like I've got a kind of a good intuitive understanding, but theoretically there's no fucking idea really, to be frank.
Fun fact about quantum mechanics is, first one is, if you think you understand it, you don't.
Yeah.
Anybody who's actually looked into it, and I have, and I don't understand it, but they just think they just discovered another fifth force of quantum mechanics, because there was things showing up that they can't explain. So you may have heard of dark matter and gravity, and then the Higgs boson, quarks, anti-quarks. There's all these little things that make up the mechanics of matter. And then everybody was going along, and it doesn't make sense, right? Because it doesn't, because we haven't got to a level of scientific discovery where we can explain it well enough for somebody who just works and lives in normal society to understand it. We're not there yet. So there is people in society with higher IQs who say, if you understand it, you don't understand it because we don't get it. But then they've just gone, oh, okay, cool. Now through Large Hadron Collider, there's all sorts of cool conspiracies about that. Go check it out. But they're saying now that there's this fifth force of nature that's not gravity, that's not dark matter, that's not the things that hold up the building blocks of life. There's another one, because there's things happening that they don't understand. So once they figure that out, then maybe it'll make sense. So we're getting closer, but yeah, quantum, you're not going to get it. And I think I know where you're going with this. It's like, we're never really going to understand something fully. And I think once we do, then it becomes boring. And as humans, we will move on to the next thing. That's the
thing, right? You can put quantum mechanics on on top shelf, because if you look at anything, you actually don't understand it. Not fully. You look at a leaf, you don't understand it fully. You look at your phone, you look at your hand. Humans and science cannot explain 0.00001% of reality. That's how limited science is even. But yet, that's what we were talking about before, when we put our absolute belief and trust and assurity on something, it cuts off all other questions and options and opportunities and possibilities. So I like the saying, the idiots are sure, the intelligent people are super confused.
It's, the higher the IQ, the less likely, Dan Pena, the higher an IQ of a person, and that's a university, I guess, tested IQ, the less likely they are to be a millionaire. Because they've been trained in risk aversion from what's right and wrong. It's all about risk aversion. It's not about risk taking. So
Mm.
to make huge sums of money, you got to take big risks. Anyway,
Yeah.
just a side topic.
Yeah.
All right, we've got some more questions, and I know you want to get to. I don't even know which one you want to get to, but we're going to get there. All right, deep dive. Now. Are you ready to have a deep dive, everybody? Matt, what's a strong opinion you currently hold?
All right, this is the one actually. Yeah, so it's that the majority of adults in the world, as in 98 to 99% of the adult population, are developed to a point of a stroppy teenage child.
Talk to me a little bit about this, because I like to disagree with opinions, but I also agree with this to some point. Because I'm a personal and professional coach for business and entrepreneurs and people, and it's I'll let you explain it, and then I'll talk about what I see in people.
Cool. And that's at best.
At best,
that's at best. Yeah.
I use the 7, 15, 30 rule. That's how people operate, nowhere else in life.
As in ages 7, 15, and 30.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to have compassion. I'll put that there. What did you say before? You asked me how does it make you feel when I say I've always do what I've always done, or something like that.
We've always done it that way.
We've always done it that way. Boom. Yeah. So what does a stroppy young teenager want? They think they know everything. They think they've figured out the world. They think they know you inside and out. They know what they want. They just want it. They're always right. You're wrong if it doesn't match what they want. That's it, right? If they get pissed off, they'll just like fucking go and do their own thing. Fuck you, I'm going to do this. Right? That's pretty much society these days.
Where do you think it comes from?
I think that is pretty much like what's the word I'm looking for? The gravitational center of where. I don't like speaking generally, because obviously there's cultures within cultures and subsets within subsets, but obviously this is super, super fucking general. But that's the gravitational center of where humans have developed to. So beyond that point, so there's depth of development and width of development, right? If I go and study quantum mechanics, that's a very wide frame of development that I'm developing on, right? If I'm developing down to depth, then I'm going through childhood, adolescence, becoming an adult, becoming a wise man, and passing on. So there's sort of this wisdom, a depth of wisdom that you go down as depth. But majority of people go to that sort of point of the stroppy teenager, go and find their width, find their plateau, their place to plateau on, and they go on and study, learn, develop, or do fuck all at that level. So there's a lot of people that have a lot of university intelligence, like you mentioned, who are very well articulate, that know their skill and their craft very well, that have mastered certain aspects of life very well. Maybe they've learned how to make businesses really well, and they're doing very well financially and successfully, materialistically, which is basically the way we judge success in our society, right? But the depth of their wisdom is very, very shallow majority of the time, a lot of the time. And the like a really clear fucking indicator of this, as soon as someone opens their mouth, if I hear like a judgment, clear judgment, and a demonization of one side or another in any form or fashion, I know that this person is clearly deep in pluralism. They're a pluralistic type development thinker, and they don't see the bigger picture. They haven't developed enough to a point where they can see systemically, and holistically the nature of reality, society, culture, themselves, any of that. They're still very much in their body. Their body is them. The world is out there, and we all fucking act accordingly. And so it's such a low form of development, and it gets us by. But you touched on before, it would be great if we did have those retreats and we did sort of have these higher vibratory forms of education and communication and modes that we can sort of work with one another. And that is all there. But unfortunately, it's so few and far between. And this is where we get to the woke people, even the woke are still in that level of pluralism. These are the guys that they're on the right path, but they're still very pluralistic in making them right and others wrong. And it's not long until they pop. But like we said, science as a belief system takes 150 years to be adopted, if that. So cultural shifts and cultural evolutions takes quite some time as well. So it's not something that we're just going to do a few breathwork classes and fix everyone, but we'll keep trying.
We'll keep starting. When you say, all right, so when you talk about woke, are you talking about left and right wing in politics, if we talk about it? So
yeah, the political side of wokeness that seems to be just getting flack at the moment. Yeah.
So when you say they're on the right path, what does that actually mean for you?
It means that in order to evolve to the next level, you need to feel the limitations and pathologies of the one you're currently in. So it's great that the woke are all about inclusiveness, about looking after the planet, about looking after each other, about looking after the quality of life for one another, right? Like they're great. But then that level of development has a pathology and has its own limitations. And in order for them to break out of that and evolve to the next one, they need to experience the limitations and the fucking pitfalls of that level. And that's what we're seeing a lot of at the moment in culture around the world. So as painful as it is, look at yourself, for example. Majority of time, either yourself or someone they didn't stop doing that fucking thing they needed to stop until they felt the pain. When they felt the pain, they fucking changed. They moved on. They were able to overcome the thing, right?
Yeah,
they're on the right path.
I experienced that with health for myself, so I understand the concept. Personally, an interesting thing to think about is, and this is for everybody, but if you are born and stay in one culture and you live in that culture, it's only a matter of time. And I mean, if you're born in Brisbane, Australia, and you never left Brisbane, Australia, and you did all the things that you were taught to do living in Brisbane, Australia, but you were born 30 years ago, you have a culture that you're running by, and some people don't want to change outside of that because it worked when they were 6 or 10. But in the last 15 years, Brisbane's gone from pretty much a country town masquerading as a city to now it's got cafes and sometimes I think it's trendier than Melbourne. And there's people there that are going.
That's a polarizing, bro.
Hey,
that's a polarizing opinion.
It's a polarizing opinion. I don't love Melbourne, but like you go down to South Bank and it's beautiful down there, and there's trendy cafes, and you pay $28 for a cocktail. Where I remember going to Brisbane when I was 18 and people being upset about paying $4.50 for a schooner, right? And if that's just for mainstream society, alcohol is a pretty standard thing, and it's how I used to judge the conversion rate to see whether I was fair when I traveled to different countries, was how much it was to buy alcohol or do experiences that are just like a little bit of a release that somebody who's working in a job is going to need. Like, for instance, in the UK, pay £7.50 for a pint, but most staff are getting £6 to £9 an hour. So you have to work an hour to an hour and a half to buy a pint if you're working in normal hospitality, and then it goes up to about 10 if you're a tradie. So in comparison to Australia, where you might a normal job earns anywhere between 27 to 35, you're only working half an hour for a pint or a cocktail or fucking whatever it is. And if you want something fancy, you're working an hour. And that's how I used to do my comparison when I went traveling. So I look at Brisbane and it's gone from this place where it's like the diner's the place where everyone goes because you get the most amount of food, bang for your buck, buffets. This is all through Australia as well, all different towns. I'm just using Brisbane as an example. To now it's like, I want a smaller portion of food that costs more, that's cooked better, so I can enjoy the flavor, even if I fucking go home hungry. And these are just primal examples, right? Food and drink. You take that up to the next level of dating, running businesses, advertising, marketing, selecting a partner. If you're running a 30-year-old program and system and culture, and then the world's moving on without you. It's changing. It doesn't give a fuck about you. Time's moving on and it will keep evolving. But you're running this old program, and this is going to circle back to what you said about people living in pluralism. And pluralism is this is my way, right? And so it's not me and them, it's me or them. So it's my way or their way, rather than my way and their way. And then once you say, I like to pay £4.50 for a beer, or the opportunity is everywhere is just going to charge $14.50 and I'm not going to go outside my house and just drink at home now or brew my own, you isolate yourself. Or we look at a city where it goes, I like to pay £4. Ford spent 3 years in the UK. I like to pay $4.50 to $5 for a beer and go out and have one. And there are places where I can go and have one that's £12 because it's got a better view, better seats, better this, better that. And these people exist and those people exist. Then I think potentially what happens inside people's brain is because the and's there, you create this bridge and people start to say things like, I like to pay $4.50 for a beer or $5. Some people are fucking probably going to be messaging me, asking me where they can get a $4.50 beer from in Brisbane.
I've already texted.
but then they go, most of the time I like to pay $5 for a beer. And sometimes I like to go sit at the rooftop bar and have a $25 cocktail and I'll have a couple of them. Your range of experience goes from this is who I am to this is what I can be. And is that kind of what you're touching on with this point of just seeing what else is out there, the bigger picture, not trying to be so linear?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you touched on there that I think is really important is that once you break out of that pluralistic nature, there's obviously an infinite amount of color and flavor in the world, right? So it's not that dissipates or disappears, but you start to recognize where it all fits into place. You are filled with a lot more compassion for those around, with a lot more love for everything around. And instead of it being a fight or a competition, it becomes a unity, a recognition that, you know, you're in grade 1 and you're playing with blocks right now, learning to count to 10. I'm in year 12 doing calculus, but I recognize that I had to play with blocks too. And then when I went into grade 2, after I played with blocks, I needed to go to grade 2. I couldn't go from playing with blocks to calculus. I needed to go to grade 2 and then grade 3 and grade 4. And not only that, I didn't leave grade 1 and the blocks there. I brought the blocks and the values and the lessons from that into grade 2 and incorporated it. And then grade 1 and 2 incorporated that into grade 3. And so looking back at where people are at developmentally, you get to a point then where it's not about they're fucking wrong, they're retarded, they're crazy, they're stupid, they're evil, which is what everyone in the pluralistic space does, whether you're a rationalist, entrepreneurial, scientifically minded, agnostic, atheist, or you're a green tree hugging hippie that identifies as an it or a fucking whatever, or you're a devout Muslim or Catholic that goes to church and prays every day, these guys are all looking at each other like they're fucking batshit crazy. They're calling each other crazy. They think that they're doing the world wrong. They think that they're doing the people and everyone wrong, and that they need to do the way that we're doing it. You guys are fucking wrong, right? We're right. And so once those levels, and there's more of those levels that are very pluralistic, but once they're transcended, you start to recognize, oh, all of these levels actually have a lot of fucking value to add. And in order to become a fully developed, I don't know if you can ever be fully developed, but a much more developed human, it's about extracting the values from each of these levels and incorporating them into the next one, recognizing the limitations of each of these levels, the pathologies that are going to come if these levels are employed to excess, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all know what fundamentalist religion looks like in excess. Looks like some fucking twin towers getting bombed, or a jihad with fucking people running around with bombs on their jackets, or people getting shot up in schools, right? So that's the pathological side of that. We all know what entrepreneurship, scientifically minded rationalists look like in excess. It looks like oil spills in the fucking ocean because they didn't check an oil rig because they want to save a few bucks to make more money, right? It looks like forests being burnt down when they need to be left up. And we all know what the greenies look like when they're in excess. They're just fucking batshit crazy as well, just like everyone else. But when you transcend beyond these, you recognize that they're on the right path. All right, you guys going a little bit batshit crazy right now. You need to experience this because you need to feel and experience for yourself what the limitations of your values are right now when they're pushed to excess. And only then will you open up your perspective and go like, fuck, we actually have a problem on our hands. What's the next solution?
Mm.
And along comes the next level of development for you. Along comes the next class. Along comes the next teacher. And so when you get to that space where you recognize this about the entire fucking world and culture, there's so much love and compassion. Like, I got a 3-year-old son. Do you think I'm telling him to come and fucking write an essay for me, or to, drive my car for me and getting shitty at him and telling him you're fucking wrong for not being able to do this, you crazy little bastard? No. I go and I put on a fucking Superman outfit and I run around like a dickhead all morning because that's where he's at and it's fun as fuck, right? I meet him where he's at. And so people need to get the fuck over themselves, let go of their own dogmatic beliefs, their I knows, start recognizing how much they don't fucking know, replace I believe with I don't know, and just open up their level of curiosity. They need to get to the curiosity gauge and twist it about 10 fucking times so that their curiosity levels are through the roof. And their I know meter is down below zero. And yeah, they'll just develop a lot faster than what they are, and find a lot of fucking cool answers too. That's my take on it.
That's great. So the piece I took out of that, and it's actually from a Ted Lasso, which is a Netflix show, which is incredibly actually enlightening. But he says, was be curious. One of the things, and he tells a story. And we're not going to mention it now for the sake of time, but what I've taken away from you would be a really, really cool and potent for anybody who's listening is to replace judgment with curiosity. And the simple way you can do that is ask questions. So you've shared a little bit about this. So tell me why you feel so strongly about this as an issue, as an opinion.
Well, it's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. Things will never be the same. Nah. It's just like, so and a way of being curious, and what I find myself saying a lot is, this is what I understand, but I'm willing to be wrong, right? So I'm actively seeking out ways to prove myself wrong, to show where I'm full of shit. So I actively seek out those within me. And so I do that. And time again, this stuff things that it's like, oh, there it is again, there it is again, there it is again. So through lots and lots and lots of firsthand experience, which is truth, my own truth, not secondhand truth or an authority that I've outsourced to someone else to create my own reality. Through my own firsthand experience, this is what I've experienced, and my life has gotten infinitely better. It's not dictated now on external stimulus, on material success, on the outside world, but I'm truly at a space now where my level of compassion for everyone around is through the fucking roof, you know, and people still give me the shits and people still do stupid shit. Don't get me wrong, but there's not the charge that used to be there. It's met with a lot more love and compassion. I recognize now that, I mean, there's always lessons in it in life for me, but whatever's going on out there as well isn't taken so serious. It's put into perspective, which is a fucking game changer. And I see people, and so this, to answer the question fully, this is the reason why I am so passionate about this, is because I see how much fucking pain people are in. I see them struggling so much. I see how many relationships are breaking down, and I see how they're not fucking doing anything about it because they're not taking responsibility for it. They're playing that pluralistic game of this fucking thing out there and that person over there. So I see such quick fixes for so many issues that with just some simple perspective shifts and expansions, well, simple now looking back, but it will resolve these. So yeah, I've felt it within myself, and I see people in pain. I just don't like seeing people struggle. So that's why.
Yeah, cool. So I think that answers the last question I was going to ask about this is, what would you say to someone who disagrees with you on this issue?
Cool. Go figure it out. I don't say anything to people that don't agree. I'm not in the business of selling anyone shit.
Yeah, cool. It's not your job to fix everybody. All right. We're going to change gears a little bit because we're going to start to wrap up. What's the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, yeah. Hang on, write that down.
It's a good one, hey?
Yeah, stop asking so many questions.
That's a fucking terrible thing to say to somebody.
No.
That
I got fired from a job after many questions.
From a job? Wow. From the manager, not the owner.
That was Yui Insurance, actually. There's a few people on the sunny coast here work there. Yeah, fucking Yui.
All right. On the flip
underdeveloped lab there, right?
We don't. We're not saying don't work at Yui. We're just saying don't ask questions. If anybody ever says anything like that to you, the actual what they're saying is I don't know the answer. Just so everyone's aware of what that means. On the flip side, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received, and why? Like, why is that the best piece of advice?
Same piece of advice, but in two ways. Always asks. There's no silly questions. And the other way of a bit of advice I got was, how many questions don't you ask that if you did would change your life completely?
Ooh, that's cool. I like that one. So the question that's in your head right now that you're too scared to ask, task for everybody today is to ask that question. All right.
Or even a level down. What questions have I not even thought of that would assist me with this?
Yeah. You know? I had a really cool quote.
Thinking about asking questions.
Exactly, because you were told to be a good person. So a good piece of advice, not advice, as a statement really, was, what do you currently believe that you wish you didn't? And if you could change it, who would you ask? So if you have something that you believe, like, I have to work 50 hours a week to make 60,000 and that's the only way I can survive. If you don't like that as a statement, I'm not saying that's for everybody, but it sounds like a pretty common one. If you didn't have to believe that, what question would you need to ask to get the answers to do things differently? And just run with that and see what happens.
Remember, we're changing belief now to I don't know. So people should never they're believing, they should recognize they should start cherry pricking apples off their belief tree and chucking them in the I don't know bin.
Yeah, the Sadhguru said, was it Sadhguru? Someone said, "What do you believe?" And he goes, "Well, believe means that I don't know." So that, yeah, I can't remember the
Yeah.
exact thing, but it's worth checking
Yeah,
out.
yeah, that's what he's like. Do you believe in God? He's like, let's put God aside for a minute. Let's talk about belief. You believe something, you just don't know. So why are you coloring it in and saying you believe? Just say you don't know.
I don't know if God exists is the question he actually wants to ask about himself. All right, we're going to wrap it up. Is there anything else I'd like you to share? Is there anything else you would like to share? Yeah, we'll run with that.
Yeah. Um, Still happens, Tyler. First off, just for everyone, Tyler's an epic like reader of the eyes. So every time I go into thought with Tyler, I get conscious about where I'm looking because I feel like he's watching my eye pattern. He's an eye pattern specialist. um, no, look, I feel like some of the big issues that are being faced today that I'm hearing a lot outside of me are to do with mental health, relationships, and loneliness and depression slash suicide. Um, Another bit of advice that I didn't understand for a long time was the answers are always within you. And I didn't understand what that meant, but I was curious enough to go and to sort of figure it out, or at least go on the path of like, what the fuck are these people talking about? Because it came from sources that I saw seemed to have a composed nature, a loving nature, a decent life, well read, well spoken, and coming from integrity, right? So that's another thing. Like, watch where you're getting your fucking information from. But yeah, the answers are within you, and so I can't stress enough how making the outside world, the people outside you, the problem is doing you no fucking favors. It's doing you an injustice. The more adept you get at turning inward and asking yourself as many questions as you can about your own inner nature, the better you'll get to know yourself, and the easier life externally becomes. With relationships, with work, money, with fucking everything. And I'm not talking about fucking manifesting a Ferrari and $1 million and the dream girl or dream guy, right? I'm saying, how would you feel if you had all the money, the dream girl, the dream guy, and the dream car? And imagine you could feel all that right fucking now, and you don't need to wait that time. You don't need to do all that shit. So that's what's possible. Okay. That's an illusion, that stuff, right? You manifest. Oh God, that's another podcast. But yeah, just you've got it within you. Seek support from people who you're drawn to, who are doing things that you feel can support you. There's always help out there. But ultimately, like, just keep asking questions. Just don't settle for the answers of your own mind, because you're allowed to tell yourself, shut up, mate, you're full of shit, right? You say it to other people all the time, whether it's out loud or in your mind. You're allowed to say it to yourself. So anything that you have going on up in your head that's unsupportive, you're allowed to tell yourself, shut the fuck up. So
Yeah,
love you.
positive self-talk can actually be telling your thoughts to be quiet and your emotions to take a sidestep while you get done what needs to be done. Positive self-talk and true self-love isn't about being always kind to yourself. It's about doing what you need to do, which is often misconstrued. And I love that you brought up the manifesting thing, because the definition of to manifest is to write a list of things to take on a journey with you. And if people just started manifesting that way, well, you'll get everything you want. All right.
All right.
Matt, I'm just want you to share with anybody. If anybody wants to get in contact with you, if they want to follow you on social media, just share anything like that and they can follow you up. And then we're going to wrap up for today. And it was awesome having you on the show. And we'll see all you guys on the Permission to Be Powerful podcast. We'll be releasing an episode weekly, sometimes bi-weekly.
Cool. Yeah, just Matt Banks, Matt with 1 T, Bankes. That's all my socials. So you'll find me there. I'm the only one actually in the world, I believe, Matthew Banks. So not hard to find.
He's a unique individual. All right, guys. See you later.
Love you, Tyler.